From a terrifying spot so deep it would crush you in seconds to a forbidden island of death. These are the places no human has ever set foot on Earth. Welcome to the Mariana Trench. It's huge, it's hostile, and will probably eat you. This 15-mile-long scar in the Pacific, just east of the Philippines, marks the deepest point in the entire ocean. It formed millions of years ago when one tectonic plate slid beneath another, dragging the seafloor down with it. Mariana's crown jewel, an area called the Challenger Deep, plunges nearly 36,000 feet below the surface. To put that into perspective, if you were to drop Mount Everest in there, its peak would still be a whole mile underwater. That's right, the tallest mountain on Earth, swallowed entirely by the sea. Yikes. Now down there, humans don't stand a chance. If you fancied a trip, by the time you reach the Challenger Deep, the pressure would be the equivalent to having 50 jumbo jets stacked on your head. In sciencey terms, that's over 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. So, either spend millions on a submersible that laughs in the face of physics, or get ready to get crushed instantly. Add perpetual darkness and temperatures just above freezing, and it becomes clear that this is not the destination for casual tourists. In fact, only a handful of explorers have ever managed to mark the descent. In 2019, Victor Vescovo set the record for the deepest manned solo dive at 35,853 feet in a state-of-the-art $40 million submersible, only to discover that even the ocean's depths aren't safe from plastic bags and candy wrappers. Yet life prevails. Saucer-sized, single-cell xenophytophores roam the seabed, and shrimp like amphipods grow to the size of rabbits. Spoonworms, pink snailfish, and other newly discovered creatures hint at even weirder residents lurking where sunlight dares not go. Would you dare? The Kerguelen Islands, or Isles of Desolation, are a remote cluster of sub-Antarctic islands in the southern Indian Ocean. Colossal, cold, and almost entirely uninhabited due to extreme weather conditions. At any given time, only a few dozen scientists, military staff, and contractors are stationed there. Yet there are no airports. You arrive by ship or not at all. And for me, the latter is a lot more appealing. The main island alone stretches a vast and unforgiving 100 miles end to end, covered with glaciers spilling down from peaks rising over 6,400 feet. French navigator Yves-Joseph de Kerguelen-Tremarec first recorded the islands back in 1772, followed a few years later by Captain James Cook, who gave the place its nickname, the Isles of Desolation. They both got out with their lives, but the Kerguelen coast has a quiet history of unlucky endings. According to logs, boats have capsized, sailors have vanished, and somewhere on the mainland lies the unmarked grave of a German serviceman from the Second World War, who died of a mysterious accident while docked there. Offshore, the remains of the Kerguelen Arch still stand. This collapsed stone gateway probably formed naturally, but with the island's remote location and sordid history, it's tempting to speculate on it being the remains of some dark, forgotten lair. Let's move on. Somewhere in the Himalayas stands a virgin peak, not because it's impossible to climb, but because no one is allowed to try. Gangkar Puensum, meaning White Peak of the Three Spiritual Brothers, is the highest unclimbed mountain on Earth. Located on the border between Bhutan and Tibet, it rises 24,800 feet into the clouds, making it the 40th tallest overall. During the mid-1980s, 4 separate expeditions attempted to reach the summit, but all were turned back due to extreme weather. If for some insane reason this is giving you ideas, don't bother. In the 1990s, Bhutan banned climbing peaks over 19,000 feet to honor local spiritual beliefs, and by 2003, mountaineering was prohibited altogether. The reason is simple enough. The gods live up there, and they prefer not to be disturbed. As a result, not only is climbing Gangkar Puensum forbidden, but the peak remains poorly mapped. So before you could even think about breaking the rules, you'd first need to convince the government to let you in on the secret. Good luck with that. Adding to the intrigue, huge footprints were spotted nearby in 2016 and appear to belong to something walking upright on two legs. Bhutan's dense forests are packed with wildlife, so it was probably a bear, but who knows what mysterious undiscovered creatures lurk up there. Now, if you plan to explore this next one, bring a water bottle. The Namib Desert stretches roughly 1,200 miles along the Atlantic coast, running from Angola through Namibia to South Africa, and is thought to be at least 55 million years old, probably the oldest desert on Earth. Some regions receive an average of just 2 millimeters of rain a year, and others see none at all. So it's no surprise that across its nearly 31,000 square miles, the Namib is almost entirely uninhabited. Historically, indigenous sand communities survived along the coast, eating plants and drinking the bitter juice of tsama melons. Today, small numbers of Aboriginal Herero and Topnar Nama Kokoe people still move cattle between scarce water sources. Large stretches of the desert, however, are simply unused. Life here runs on efficiency. Oryx go weeks without water, mountain zebras scale rocky slopes, and everything else persists in conditions that feel actively hostile. One of Namib's most treacherous stretches is a 300-mile expanse of towering sand dunes running along the Atlantic, the Skeleton Coast. The name is apt. It's littered with whale carcasses and nearly 1,000 shipwrecks, thanks to deadly currents and poor decisions. The coast here is often wrapped in dense fog, formed when the sea's cold current meets the hot desert air blowing out of the Namib. Oh, and then there are the fairy circles, near-perfect rings of plant-free earth surrounded by patches of grass, some nearly 80 feet wide. Some scientists blame termites. They claim that by clearing vegetation from the land, they create a barren space in the soil that allows rainfall to seep deeper into the earth, creating a sort of underground reservoir for the termites to drink from. Local legends, however, credit the footprints of the god Mukuru, while others whisper of ancient UFO landing sites. Deep beneath Antarctica's ice sheet, whispers of a monstrous creature stir the imagination. In 2012, science fiction author C. Michael Forsyth introduced Organism 46b, a 14-tentacled venomous shapeshifter said to lurk in Lake Vostok, capable of paralyzing prey from 150 feet away and even masquerading as a human. Chilling? Yes. Fictional? Well, we'll get to that. Lake Vostok, however, is definitely real. Buried deep under 2.5 miles of ice and named after the Russian research station up top, this mysterious subterranean lake remains liquid thanks to a geothermal heat vent in the Earth's crust melting the bottom of the ice sheet. Roughly 150 miles long and 30 miles wide, larger than Lake Ontario, it's been sealed from Earth's atmosphere for 15 to 20 million years. Scientists first suspected something strange was lurking beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet in the 1960s, when radar equipment picked up anomalies in the landscape, but it wasn't until the 1990s that it was confirmed. But actually reaching Lake Vostok is no small task. Scientists must drill through miles of ice under strict, sterile conditions so as not to contaminate the untouched lake, and international protocols tightly limit what can be done once the water is reached. In 2010, scientists gained approval to take a sample, but had to bend over backwards to do it safely. To avoid contamination, instead of going straight in, they lowered a drill until a sensor detected liquid, then withdrew it, adjusting the pressure so the lake water was drawn upward. After this, the hole was left to freeze, forming an ice plug, which they retrieved the following season. When the sample was finally acquired and melted in 2012, a glass was famously presented to Vladimir Putin. Luckily for him, he was advised not to drink it, because after testing, the results were, unexpected. See, scientists discovered thousands of utterly unique DNA sequences within the water, evidence of extremophiles surviving in total darkness down there, in near-freezing temperatures, forced to use chemical energy instead of sunlight. So is this evidence of Forsyth's organism 46b after all? Probably not, but it seems like whatever's sealed off down there is far stranger than any made-up monster. The Yucatan cenotes are a series of sinkholes that form a vast network of caves spread across Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Their origin traces back to one of Earth's more dramatic moments, the Chicxulub asteroid that smacked into the planet 66 million years ago and wiped out the dinosaurs. Yep, that old chestnut. The impact caused the area's limestone bedrock to collapse and expose the groundwater below, creating the Ring of Cenotes, a circular chain of sinkholes that neatly outline the crater's edge. What remains today is a dark, twisting labyrinth of partially flooded caves that remain largely unexplored. For thousands of years, the Maya, the region's ancient inhabitants, relied on the cenotes as their primary source of fresh water. They also believed that these caves were gateways to Xibalba, the underworld, and that the rain god Chak dwelled within. To stay on his good side, offerings of jade, gold, and sometimes humans were lowered into their depths. So sure, there's treasure down there. But skeletons too. Biologically, cenotes are strange places as well. Their submerged passages are home to blind shrimp, pale crustaceans, and other spooky creatures adapted to permanent darkness and low oxygen. Fish, on the other hand, tend to avoid these dark passages, probably a sensible choice. Speaking of sensible choices, meet Gamma, an AI-powered creative partner that turns ideas into polished presentations, plans, websites, and documents in minutes. No formatting headaches, no design stress, all fully customizable. And with the ChatGPT connector, Gamma uses your interactions with ChatGPT to turn your goals, habits, and interests into something you can actually act on. Simply connect the two up in your ChatGPT settings to get started. If creativity is your thing, this cross-functionality can turn your loose ideas into pitch decks and story structures. If you want to boost your fitness, you can build a 30-day plan in seconds, tailored to your needs and availability. If you're seeking a career boost, Gamma and ChatGPT can analyze your skills, habits, and even thinking patterns, identifying gaps and growth areas. All it takes is asking ChatGPT something like, based on everything you know about me, create a presentation demonstrating my professional strengths and personality. This is what it came up for me. It's literally me in presentation form, so give it a try. Ask ChatGPT something about yourself and turn it into a presentation with Gamma. You'll be surprised at how insightful it can be. Better yet, it's free to start, so join over 50 million users at gamma.app today. Now back to it. A world without sunlight is unsettling enough, but Earth has another way of keeping people away: the cold. In northeastern Russia lies the Siberian Sakha Republic, a region so vast it covers nearly a fifth of the country. Much of Sakha sits above the Arctic Circle, where average temperatures stay below freezing for most of the year. Nature's polite way of saying, don't bother. Despite rivaling India in size, fewer than 1 million people live here to India's 1.47 billion, with roughly a third clustered in the capital, Yakutsk. Yakutsk is often described as the coldest city on Earth, with winter temperatures regularly dropping below -40 degrees Fahrenheit. However, travel further northeast and you'll reach places like Verkhoyansk, where temperatures have fallen to -80, among the coldest ever recorded. Permafrost dominates the landscape, keeping the ground frozen solid for years, sometimes decades at a time. But the planet is warming, and as it slowly starts to melt, roads warp, buildings shift, and venturing across the landscape has become even more of a nightmare. Plus, all that melting permafrost has begun to cough up some long-buried secrets from the Ice Age. Like Sasha, the 50,000-year-old woolly rhinoceros discovered in 2014, its hair still intact. Mammoths, prehistoric foals, and cave lion cubs have all followed, preserved with eerie precision. Let's just hope that screaming baby from the movie Ice Age stays buried. Welcome to Hang Son Doong, the biggest cave on the planet. Discovered by accident during a storm in the Vietnamese jungle by a local named Ho Khan. He'd taken shelter beneath the cliff to escape the rain when he noticed something strange: icy air and giant columns of fog pouring out of an entrance in the rock. Wisely, he didn't poke around alone, instead waiting the storm out and then dashing through the thick forest home. Only he couldn't remember how to get back. Indeed, it wasn't until 19 years later in 2009 when he returned with a British-Vietnamese expedition team who surveyed the site and confirmed the unthinkable. By volume, Hang Son-doong measures around 1.36 billion cubic feet, enough space to swallow entire city blocks of 40-story buildings. One chamber is so enormous that a Boeing 747 could fly through it. Stalagmites rise over 229 feet tall, the tallest ever recorded, and have been growing for millions of years. Two collapsed sections of the roof have formed mega skylights, allowing some sunlight to flood in and generating localized weather systems inside the cave. Clouds form, rain falls, and distinct microclimates have emerged, supporting the so-called Garden of Edam, a thriving subterranean jungle. Bizarre rock formations known as phytokarst grow towards the light, and calcium-carrying water dropping from the ceiling forms cave pearls. Not to say there aren't living creatures down there too, many of which have evolved without eyes altogether. Who knows what else might be lurking in the shadows, waiting for explorers foolish enough to venture further. Luckily, despite being known as the bucket list cave, human access is very limited. Only small guided groups are allowed to follow a single route through the system, with a 5-day trek costing around $3,000. Sheesh. That means a lot of the cave system is spooky, unexplored darkness. It's easy to picture a lone, unsuspecting explorer wandering through the jungle, completely unaware of what's below their feet. Despite being, a country, Greenland remains mostly unexplored. That's thanks to the colossal ice sheet covering roughly 700,000 square miles, over 80% of the island. And this is no light dusting. In places, the Greenland ice sheet reaches up to 10,000 feet thick, with geological records tracing its presence back to the Eocene epoch, between 33 and 56 million years ago. Modern exploration began in the 19th century and intensified during the Cold War, when outposts like Station Nord were established for research and military purposes. Today, scientists at remote stations like Summit Camp drill miles-deep ice cores, that is, cylinder-shaped samples of ice so deep they show millions of years of climate history from before humans even existed. Ice cores from the abandoned base, Camp Century, have recently revealed ancient soil, leaves, moss, and twigs, proof that parts of the sheet were once green with foliage. But beneath all that ice, there are also things we probably don't want to meet, like ancient parasites, the remains of Ice Age ecosystems frozen for millennia, blissfully unaware of humanity. And as the ice slowly thaws, some could be beginning to stir. Tourists are only allowed to venture to the edges of the sheet, and only with a guide. Beyond that, the ice remains pristine. The ethical dilemma is obvious. Every human footprint threatens the fragile environment. Me? I'm more worried about what we might wake up. Unlike Gangkar Puensem, hidden deep within Bhutan's forests, Macha Puchare rises boldly from Nepal's Annapurna Range, impossible to miss from the city of Pokhara. At a dominating 22,943 feet, its twin summits form the unmistakable fishtail peak, a sharp, symmetrical silhouette that practically dares you to take a closer look. Its constant visibility makes the mountain part of everyday life for local communities. Yet despite this familiarity, it's never been climbed. For centuries, the local Gurung and Magar people have regarded it as sacred, believing the summit to be the earthly home of the god Shiva. Legend warns that anyone who attempts the ascent risks divine wrath. Not that it stopped people from trying. The closest anyone came was during a 1957 British expedition, which reached within a mere 500 feet of the peak before being forced to turn back due to bad weather. Oddly, the lead expeditioner, Lieutenant Colonel James Roberts, advised the Nepalese government to close the mountain soon after, despite having been incredibly excited to scale it himself. And they listened. Now, nobody can even attempt the climb. Did something happen up there? Something so dark that Roberts didn't think anyone should ever climb it again? We may never know. The Hranis Abyss is a flooded freshwater cave in the Czech Republic. At first glance, it could pass for a quiet, unremarkable pool set into the rocky countryside. It's only when you peer over the edge that the enormity below becomes clear. A horrifyingly deep vertical chasm that has awed and terrified explorers for over a century. The earliest attempt to measure the chasm was supposedly in 1580, when a diver tried to reach the bottom by holding his breath. Safe to say, if true, he didn't get very far. Then, at the turn of the 20th century, J.V. Sindel, a diving instructor, took a boat into the cave and lowered a weight line from it. It reached 118 feet deep before getting stuck against the rocky walls of the well. In 1980, divers sent a special probe which hit an insane 853 feet underwater. But the abyss wasn't done showing off. In 2016, legendary Polish diver Krzysztof Starnowski sent an underwater ROV drone down the shaft. Guess how far it reached? A spine-tingling 1,325 feet before the fiber optic cable ran out, making Hranice Abyss the deepest known flooded freshwater cave on Earth. And its true bottom? Still a mystery. Here's what we know the cave's layout looks like up to a point, but the end is a pure guess because nobody's had the gonads to dive down and find out. Visibility in those darkest depths is non-existent. The water is corrosive and painful to the touch, and a layer of toxic carbon dioxide lingers at the surface, threatening to suffocate anyone ill-prepared. Sheesh. Plus, unlike typical caves, which are formed slowly as rainwater eats away from above, this one was seemingly carved from the bottom up. How? Well, one theory is that acidic groundwater deep beneath the Earth's surface was cooked by the Earth's core and seeped upwards, dissolving the limestone from below. But it's just a theory. What if something less natural had a hand in shaping it? That's enough to keep me up all night. Remember Lake Vostok? Well, it turns out it's sitting within something even more ridiculous. An underwater mountain range. Yup. The Gamburtsev Mountains are hidden beneath Antarctica's ice sheet, same as Vostok. You can't climb them, you can't even see them, yet they rise as high as the Alps and stretch for hundreds of miles. So how were they discovered? Well, back in 1958, a Soviet expedition were surveying the area when their seismic instruments began reacting as if they were passing over the Himalayas, despite being at ground level. Later, radar imaging confirmed the funky phenomenon. There were huge peaks, valleys, and ridges entombed beneath layers of frozen mystery. What puzzles geologists is how these mountains got there. Most ranges, like the Himalayas and the Andes, formed when two tectonic plates in the Earth's crust crashed into each other. But there are no such plates in the Antarctic. The current explanation is that the Gamburtsev Mountains were pushed up over 500 million years ago, back when Antarctica was part of the supercontinent Gondwana, long before the ice sheet arrived. One thing's for sure, no human has ever set foot on these sunken peaks. Most of what we know comes from radar and guesswork, which has had an unintended side effect, fueling hollow Earth theories. Hollow what, I hear you say? Well, hollow Earthers believe that the planet is, well, hollow, with vast hidden interiors and possibly whole civilizations tucked away just out of sight. I don't know about that, but combine it with many hoops you gotta jump through just for a glimpse of Antarctica from a boat, like getting a government-issued permit, and it's no wonder the continent has such mysterious mythos about it. And if that piqued your interest, meet something even more gobsmacking, the Venezuelan tepuis. These flat-topped mountains rise out of the rainforest in Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil. There are 115 in the region, and despite what they look like from above, they're not floating on thin air, but actually rising through the clouds, which is why the indigenous Pimon people named them Tepui, meaning House of Gods. Indeed, thanks to those sheer cliffs, it would be impossible for any human to attempt the climb. Each tepui is cut off from its neighbors by vertical walls, turning its summit into what scientists call a sky island. Pretty magical, right? The formations are ancient remnants of sandstone plateaus that formed more than 2 billion years ago. Over vast stretches of time, the surrounding rock eroded away until all that remain are these isolated tepuis standing tall above the jungle floor. Some islands are scarred by deep fissures, others massive sinkholes. Plants and animals were forced to evolve in isolation, and there are species here found nowhere else on the planet, like the freaky Roraima bush toad, which has thick, warty skin to reflect the intense sun. From above, some summits look less like mountaintops and more like forgotten worlds. Arthur Conan Doyle thought so too. His novel The Lost World was inspired by Mount Roraima, the only tepui reachable on foot, thanks to a natural ramp. Who knows what other strange species dwell on these mystical peaks? Somewhere in a remote corner of Canada, the ground itself appears to have turned to the dark side. The so-called Sarlacc's Pit is a vast vertical cave hidden deep within the deceptive beauty of British Columbia's Wells Gray Provincial Park. But the pit itself is the sort of place that makes you realize some corners of the map are better left unexplored. Its exact location is officially undisclosed because the surrounding terrain is so brutal and the site itself so dangerous, it's illegal to venture there. Yet it was only identified as recently as 2018 during an aerial survey. Scientists reckon it was obscured by the area's typically heavy snow cover, but climate change has changed that, thawing the snow and revealing the pitch-black entrance. Let's hope no one's fallen in already. Biologist Bevan Ernst was the first to point out that it looks suspiciously like the Sarlacc pit from Star Wars, which houses a creature that digests its victims over 1,000 years. The entrance of the real Sarlacc pit may not hold a sarlacc, but it does open into a gaping shaft about 300 feet long and 200 feet wide, dropping straight down into darkness. Its walls are streaked with marble and layered stone, and mist hangs constantly in the air, making it difficult to tell where solid ground ends and empty space begins. If that somehow sounds fun to you, don't bother. British Columbia Parks will fine you up to $1 million just for entering the surrounding area without permission. So for now, the Sarlacc's Pit remains untouched, and maybe that's for the best. Sandwiched between Canada and Greenland is a strange uninhabited landmass stretching over 21,000 square miles and resembling another planet entirely. This is Devon Island. People have tried to live on this frozen wasteland for centuries, but every attempt has resulted in failure and even tragedy. In the early 20th century, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police set up a post on Devon Island called Dundas Harbour with a group of Inuits to signal ownership. However, 2 of the 3 RCMP officers wound up dead, and in both cases it was self-inflicted. Was it the extreme isolation and poor living conditions that drove them to such a cruel fate, or something more sinister? We'll never know. Regardless, the remaining officer and Inuits fled, and after a couple of half-hearted restarts, the post was abandoned for good in 1951. The Arctic had made its feelings clear. Indeed, despite a host of doomed expeditions, only about 1% of the island has ever been walked on. You can visit, but you'll be mostly constrained to seeing the Houghton Impact Crater, a 12-mile-wide scar left by a meteorite where NASA tests equipment designed for Mars. Yep, Devon Island is so cold, dry, and rocky and deeply uncooperative that it's literally as close to another planet as anywhere Earth is willing to offer. Astronauts even train here to practice the psychological strain of operating far from help. Summers are brief, winters are punishing, and there's absolutely no infrastructure to speak of. Yeah, hard pass. In the far north of Myanmar's Kachin state, where the borders of China and India blur into steep mountains and deep valleys, lies the northern Myanmar Forest Complex. Despite its imposing vastness, less than 2% of the entire area is affected by humans. Indigenous communities make up that percentage and have lived here for centuries. According to local belief, the forest is also home to gnats, powerful spirits said to guard the land and punish anyone who dares harm it. Perhaps that's why it remains so untouched. Scientists only began to grasp the complex's full scale in the late 20th century when they realized it covers around 12,000 square miles and hosts 2 major rivers, the Irrawaddy and the Chindwin. The mountainous valleys these rivers reside in are prone to landslides when heavy monsoon rains saturate the soil. which can strike dangerously without warning. Who knows how many indigenous people have wandered the wrong way and been crushed? Not to mention the tigers, bears, and giant hornets. But the region is also home to one of the world's scariest and most valuable parasites. Found on high, grassy plateaus, Cordyceps sinensis, locally known as shibari, takes over unlucky hosts, just caterpillars for now, before killing them and flamboyantly bursting out of the nearest orifice. Yep, you heard that right. Mind-controlled caterpillars with fungus sprouting out of their faces. Even weirder, people pay a fortune to consume this delicacy, turning it into fungi parasite soup. Ugh. Used for centuries as an ingredient in traditional Chinese and Tibetan medicine, the creepy little things are estimated to sell for around $20,000 per kilo. No wonder hustlers are willing to cozy up to what is essentially a zombie parasite. The problem is, the more lucrative the fungus, the harder it is to keep the forest so pristine. Foragers trample vegetation, leave behind trash, and risk upsetting delicate ecosystems. With money like this on the line, even the gnats might struggle to keep this corner of the world untouched. Tsingy de Bemaraha National Park is located on the western edge of Madagascar, a place whose long isolation has shaped both its history and extraordinary natural features. The park gets its name from the Malagasy word tsingy, meaning where one cannot walk barefoot. Looking at the bizarrely jagged limestone peaks, it's easy to imagine a giant doing some sort of balancing act trying to get across. The razor-sharp formations have long kept explorers at bay, leaving much of the park as it is for millennia. The peaks began forming around 200 million years ago, as layers of seashells, plants, and marine life were compressed under the weight of the sea. When the waters receded, about 5 million years ago, rain slowly sculpted the soft rock, carving spires, hidden valleys, and narrow canyons unlike anywhere else on Earth. Despite its inaccessibility, the park is far from lifeless. Among its remarkable residents are at least 11 species of lemur, including a locally endemic Bemaraha woolly lemur and the endangered Vanderdeckens sifaka, as well as rare reptiles like the leaf chameleon Furcifer nicosae and the crucially endangered Madagascar big-headed turtle. Humans are largely left out, which suits the park's inhabitants just fine. Hidden along Brazil's border with Peru lies an immense swath of rainforest, roughly the size of Austria, reachable only by snaking rivers and dense, tangled trees. The Vale do Javari covers tens of thousands of square miles and is so remote, so impenetrable, that entering it feels like stepping back in time. The area is home to at least 14 indigenous tribes living in voluntary isolation, who've never seen a Tesla Cybertruck, or even a wheel for that matter. These communities are estimated to number around 2,000 individuals, but there could be many more. The Brazilian government keeps a watchful eye from the air and backs the no-contact principle that allows these communities to remain completely isolated. Non-indigenous peoples are legally barred from entering the territory without special permission. Unlike indigenous lands elsewhere in Brazil, which have been colonized, deforested, and polluted, the Javari's sheer inaccessibility has kept it largely untouched, but it's under threat. Illegal loggers and gold miners lurk at the forest's edge, and there are grim reports of violence against uncontacted tribes. Recently, miners were alleged to have boasted of the brutal mass deletion of 10 members of one such tribe. International law is firmly on the side of indigenous people. These communities hold collective ownership of their land and have the right to reject contact, preserving a way of life that has survived for thousands of years. Deep within the Amazon rainforest near the border between Peru and Brazil rises Cerro El Cono, a mysterious pyramid-shaped peak that towers 1,312 feet above the jungle canopy. It's unlike anything around it, so striking that it almost seems deliberate. Local indigenous communities have known about it for generations and regard it as an apu, that is, a sacred mountain spirit. Outside attention came much later, via explorers and aerial surveys of eastern Peru. From above, it appears almost artificial. Indeed, geologically, Cerro El Cono is peculiar. I mean, look at it. It's a giant green traffic cone. There are no obvious foothills, no gradual slopes. Some suggest it's a dormant volcano that pushed up rapidly and then stopped. Others, less cautiously, have proposed it might be an ancient pyramid. If that were true, it would be the tallest ever constructed. But it would also have required an ancient Amazonian civilization with access to industrial-level planning and a really big spirit level. Man, there's no evidence such civilization ever existed. The only thing is, this utter lack of knowledge about the formation is not an accident. The mountain is surrounded by near impenetrable rainforest and lies within Sierra del Divisor National Park, where indigenous groups actively protect what they believe is a sacred spirit. No one has climbed it, no excavations or core samples have been taken, and no answer has ever been found. So, could all that greenery be hiding a mysterious ancient structure after all? We may never know. North Sentinel Island tops this list for a simple reason. Visiting it isn't just discouraged, it's punished in the worst way possible. Sitting in the Bay of Bengal as part of India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands, the densely forested North Sentinel is home to the Sentinelese, one of the most isolated indigenous groups on Earth. They've lived here for thousands of years and have made it abundantly clear they want no contact with outsiders. Technically, North Sentinel Island falls under Indian jurisdiction, but visiting it is illegal. The Indian government enforces a strict no-contact policy, monitored by air and sea patrols, largely to protect the Sentinelese from diseases to which they have no immunity. History shows why. Other tribes in the region suffered catastrophic population declines after contact brought illness, exploitation, and loss of land. But if you think the policy only protects the tribe, well, think again. In 2006, 2 fishermen drifted too close to the island and were killed. Later in 2018, American missionary John Allen Chow illegally arranged transport to the island, attempting to convert the tribe to Christianity. Despite the islanders drawing back their bows as a warning, he only left temporarily, returning to try and read them the Bible. They shot it. Still unperturbed, Chow returned a final time, and his body has never been recovered. In an increasingly mapped and monitored world, North Sentinel Island remains one of the rare places where modern humans are neither wanted nor needed. And for once, everyone involved seems to agree it should stay that way. Now that you're aware, do you have a burning desire to visit any of these places? Let me know down in the comments, and thanks for watching.